Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. A pleasure to speak to you today. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Lovely to see you.
Thanks for taking the time. Maybe you could kick off with a brief intro to this incredible new show, To Cook a Bear. What can people expect when they tune in to watch it?
What I hope is excitement. And it's a story that has beautiful scenery, it has violence, it has love, it has passion, it has all the exciting things in life.
Hmm. And see, the novel has been translated into 15 languages, so it's obviously captured people's imaginations via the word on the page. But what do you think made it right for adapting for the screen?
All the emotions. And of course, as somebody who loves to shoot pretty pictures, it also lent the opportunity to really to use nature in a way in the story that I think is very exciting, also for an international audience, that it sort of lifts that out up. In that way, it's almost like a western, set in a very new setting.
Obviously, when there's a book that's so rich and detailed, it must be difficult to know how on earth you can capture that all on screen, and you're not going to be able to put everything there. But what was most important to you working with the script writer to capture? What were the most important things to keep in?
In general, not to chicken out and to allow it to have the depth of character, but also sort of being so broad in scope and emotion. So allow, in the Nordic countries, we'd have a tendency to put a lid on things. And that can be very exciting because something simmering below. But this also thing here, also things explode and bad things happen, and not to be afraid of that. And of course, I want to manifest that on screen by also showing a different kind of, period crime drama or period, crime thriller. In spending so much energy on the character work and make sure that everybody's not just pretty, but everybody has character. And I thought that was exciting. And actors, of course, they love that.
And yeah, that does seem to be, obviously you've worked on other things of this genre, but always making sure they're very grounded. So why is that something that's very important to you? And how do you achieve that?
First of all, I'm a writer as well as a director. So, you spend a lot of time thinking about subtext in scenes, not just in story, and that's a great thing when you work with actors because actors want to be good. And if you can help them be good, and if you see actors, they're with you. And as also as a lot is of course in casting, in finding the characters, finding the actors that can embody that. But you're right though. It's interesting you say that with being grounded because to me that's how it's believable. That's how it gets emotional. And to me, that's why I wanted to make films so I could and TV is to sort of elicit emotion and tell stories that people feel, not just watch.
And an incredible cast across the board, but particularly with Gustaf. I mean, I know he's also been collaborating with you, on the production side as well, and then taking on this character of the pastor, because it's one that has, different sides to it that are in tension, both sort of very charismatic, but also very provocative. So what was it like collaborating with him, I guess, more broadly, but particularly taking on this character?
First of all, he's just like he seems. He's he's a very pleasant person to work with. And for me, I've done this before. When you do a big series, you want a partner in the lead. You want somebody who's involved, takes responsibility. You can discuss casting with, because they help. They help if they always, because that always does, always prepared, always on time, always extremely professional, that just ups the standard of everybody around them, and everybody has to sort of live up to that. So I know you don't just get a good performance, but if you get the right person who's willing to share, who's willing to be, let's say, in the football terms, if I'm the manager, the lead is sometimes the captain on the pitch, and in this setting, Gustaf definitely was. So I was looking for somebody who had those qualities. And he had them. And of course, you also want somebody who, he is physically is very opposite the historical figure he's based on, who's short and stout, and Gustaf is tall, and very different. What the reason we choose him was because he was so good. we just couldn't say no when he said yes. So we were so thrilled to have him. I'm so glad you enjoyed him in it. It looks like you did. It was up at 3, 4 in the morning and sat there for hours, just getting into makeup. He had 2 wigs on, and you need somebody who has the stamina for that. And a lot of people don't, And also, particularly, we also, Emmy that plays his son is a relatively newbie, and to find and you just saw his arc just went through the roof, because he was also being influenced and helped and giving confidence of of the people around him, particularly Gustaf. And I think that's something you want to do as a director, but that's also something you look at and your lead is somebody who can help other gain confidence, and also is not afraid of being ugly in a moment, of doing ugly things, to show the range of human experience, but also human action.
It's a bit of a cliche to say, the setting as a character, but it does seem very much relevant in this case. And I know you were shooting across, 40 different locations in Finland and Sweden. Can you give us a bit of a taste of what this shoot was like? I mean, it must have been incredible, but also very challenging at moments.
Oh, yeah, it was a very hard shoot in many ways, because it was because one thing is the places. Usually you try to find something that's relatively accessible. You don't always succeed, but you try to. But then, of course, there's all the travel between these locations, which really eats up your time and is hard on your budget. So sometimes you have to, not compromise, but combine things and work very efficiently when you have the opportunity. So that's one challenge. And of course, mosquitoes and reindeer and all that. There's a lot of nature that takes its toll.
And thinking back to it, was there a moment that you found particularly difficult, or when you watch it back now, a scene that you love the most that you can't wait for audiences to see?
Well, the whole stuff we did on the marsh, we did a lot of stuff in the marsh, but I don't want to spoil too much. But in the episode 1, there's a big scene towards the end in the marsh. That was a very tough day because it was on and off raining, which, you're standing in marsh basically to your knees, right, at some point. And it was terribly hot, and there's horseflies everywhere. And, that affects people's moods. And it was so vital. Those shots were so vital. So that was a hard day to come through. And I'm so glad it turned out the way it did.
And I guess with any shows like this, we kind of transported to another era, back to the 1800s. We can kind of detach from our current reality. But then there are other things that very much can chime with a modern day audience about kind of truth and social exclusion and, who we follow, who we're convinced by, when we're sort of charmed by someone's words. Is that something we can trust? What do you think a modern day audience might take away from the show?
Well, I think what you said there is things we're hoping for. I mean, this happened in a border town, in a frontier town, in a place where different cultures meet and have to coexist, where there's social structures that creates difficulties and perhaps needs to be challenged, and also actually the meaning of truth in the time of bigotry and a time of superstition. There's actually to believe in science, to believe in facts, which of course in this case it's the pastor that does that. The pastor is a scientist, which is also interesting.
Or even this idea, of blaming problems on this sort of mythic monster of the bear, how we do that in society when we're fearful, we can't explain things, finding that other, let's say, or that monster that we can sort of point to and blame for things. I feel like that's something we can obviously maybe apply to even society today.
Wow, that was a very good analysis. I'm going to steal that. That was great. But no, you're right though, because it is, the bear is that monster in the marsh. And yes, that's very true, very relevant.
Obviously, also, I think what's amazing about, the streaming platforms these days is, you're going out to a completely global audience, all in one go. So I guess it might play differently to audiences around the world, and being steeped in that kind of Nordic history and culture that, can be quite educational. So what does that mean to you to know, people all around the world are going to be watching your show?
Oh, it's exciting, and it's also a responsibility. I'm not saying into portraying the Nordic region in a beautiful manner, but it's just to show something. I mean, I believe in universality and specificity, right? You have to tell this one story. You're not telling a generic Nordic story. You're telling this specific story, and I think that's what resonates. Father-son, for instance, being the outsider, being the one always picked at. And I also think in the streaming world, the one thing you can't do is be careful and bore people, because there's things sometimes, to be honest, things just look too much alike. So what I wanted to do was for this show to go all the way and make it look different. And at least in a Nordic setting, it definitely does. So I hope the world will see the same and see the fun we had in doing that and taking that far.
And what's going to be next for you? Do you already have an idea for your next project? Are there any things on your bucket list you haven't done yet? A genre that you haven't, stepped into, or an actor you'd love to work with?
Before I did this, I did Irwin Welsh's Crime in the UK. And I'd love some more work in the UK if that comes up. But right now, I'm writing my first crime novel myself. So that's exciting.
That's very
It's a
exciting.
commission to do that. So that's what I'm doing right now.
Incredible. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that with me. I cannot wait for everyone else to see the show. And of course, can't wait to read your next book. Thanks so much. Lovely to chat to you. Thank you. Bye.